for Walt's service today. I love when I get asked to be a celebrant because you meet a lot of really cool people, and Walt was a pretty neat guy from what I've learned. But it's always hard to take someone's life, a life well lived, and put it into a concise service. After spending some time speaking with Brooke and Jeff, I realized that I had my work cut out for me. Walt lived a full life and did so many things, to say the least. While 75 is not old, the impact he made on the people around him in those years was more than what some people could make in 175 years. While I did not have the privilege of knowing Walt, today I want us to remember the memories and the stories that Walt left behind. His passing is a big loss to many people, but today let's remember a life well lived. As I thought about what I was going to say about Butch, the first thing that kept coming into my mind was his pocket watch collection. For anyone who has ever been in his home, it should be pretty clear that Walt had a love for antique watches. I assume this hobby Ed was partially responsible for that, because I hear Ed started at a young age. But I feel like it's something they could bond over. When I went to Walt's home after he passed, as soon as I entered the hallway, I said to the guy that was with me, "Those are watch tools on the table." After he gave me an odd look and asked me how on earth you could possibly know that when you just stepped inside the door, I told him just to trust me. When we got closer to his dining room, it became clear that he had a few different watches. And they lined the table, the counter, and just about every visible surface in the home. It didn't take long to learn from Brooke that he was a member of the National Association of Watch and Clock Collectors, an organization that I'm also a proud member of. Now, Walt joined in 1984, which is before I was born, but instantly I felt a connection to someone with the same hobby. After I told my co-workers, "See, I told you he liked timepieces," he had to admit I was correct then. I had to explain to him that watch and clock collecting is a sickness and that you can't just have 100. I think the pocket watch sets the perfect theme for today's service. Much like people, watches are made up of little components that work together. When they were manufactured, they were robust mechanical timepieces that help people keep track of times and the events of their lives. Very reminiscent of youth. As watches get older, they may need little tweaks or adjustments, maybe some oil. I'm sure there's some people here who feel like they could use a little oil or a tweak in this room today, but they keep working much like people. Now, there are times in a watchmaker's career they recognize a watch may just be plain worn out after a century of work. They start to have more and more problems, and sometimes they just can't be fixed. There are times when people's bodies just give out, and that's when their life comes to an end. When you wind a watch, this represents more than what people may think it does. Time is not just about the numbers, it's a basis for the memories. While people view time as an enemy, remembering only the beginning and the end, it's important to remember the periods in between the wines. This is what I like to call life. So much happens between the first wine when the spring is tight and ready to go, and when the spring loses power at the end of the day. Today, I want to focus on this period as we remember the life of Walt. One of the most defining characteristics that stood out to me was Walt's work ethic. Brooke shared that when the Warbles were growing up, they didn't have a lot. Their home did not have indoor plumbing. They heated the house with the firewood they cut, and the boys' daily job was to get water to supply the family. Their neighbor allowed them to farm the land that was near their house, which allowed them to provide for themselves. Brooke told me that Walt would often mention that without that land, their family would not have made it. While things were hard, that never stopped any of them from trying to better themselves. Brooke said that all the Warbles made sure they graduated high school. Today, this is something people take for granted, but at that time, it wouldn't have been uncommon for people to drop out and enter into the workforce. Walt saw finishing high school as a necessity. Now, Brooke said he applied himself just enough so that he never got held back a grade. But when he entered Central Dauphin High School, it became clear that math and art were his things. I can agree with the art, the math, I definitely missed that boat. He studied at Vo-Tech and worked while he was in school. I believe Brooks said that one of his first jobs was pouring foundations for swimming pools, which is not something you think of an early teenager doing today. Walt did earn a spot on the honor roll, which was in part because of his competitive nature. He had a friend who he would compete with to see who could get the highest grades. Finally, his senior year, Walt beat his friend and earned a spot on the honor roll. As many of you know, Walt was a talented carpenter. Another similarity between Ed and Walt, I feel like he just copied what you did, Ed. But when I asked Brooke what kind of carpentry jobs he did, I soon realized I didn't have enough room on my paper as she began to list the projects he worked on. He worked on projects at 3 Mile Island, for Hershey, Johnson & Johnson, the Capitol Building, and retired from the Pennsylvania Judicial Center. At his last job, he was a project manager and spent his time redoing courtrooms with elaborate architecture. He had a special feature named after him, which I was told was called the Warble return. So rather than making a window return that looked out of place, he figured a way to make it blend in architecturally without looking like it was randomly put there. Brooke and Jeff said that if he was mentoring someone and they weren't exactly doing something correctly, he would never yell or make them feel bad. He would simply repeat himself 4 or 5 times until the person got the idea. From a kid driving a tractor on the family's field because he wasn't old enough to throw the hay bales, to becoming a project manager that handled complex architectural designs for the government, this shows Walt was not afraid to work hard to achieve his goals. His work ethic did not stop with him. He also instilled it in his own family. Brooke recalls that when he was growing up, her mom and Walt would essentially homestead. He knew he had a family to feed and wanted to not only provide for them, but to teach them how to provide for themselves. Brooke said she remembered Walt taking her to her hunter safety class when she was 10 or 11 so that she could go hunting with him. She said that he was not a trophy hunter and hunted for practicality. What they shot, they would eat. I feel like Walt's early life facilitated this deep respect with the earth. He knew that hunting was a means of survival and appreciated whatever bounty they could bring home. He was disgusted by waste and could never understand how someone could just waste food. He knew what it was like to have very little, and even when he began to earn more, he never lost his mentality. While Brooke and Jeff appreciated and understood his frugal nature, there were times he could be a little headstrong about it, I was told. They said they were trying to convince him to buy a new battery for his truck because it was very clearly on its way out. Brooke said that he just kept saying that once upon a time he had a battery that lasted 12 years, so she said he felt that every battery from here on out should last the same amount of time. She tried to explain that the way things were made then was a little different, but I'm not sure that she ever won that battle. One really nice story Brooke told me was that I just wanted to mention because I thought it was so neat, was that he enjoyed going to a restaurant called McCleary's, where his grandson worked for many years. Brooke and Jeff both agreed he was so proud of his grandson that worked there because it was a place where doctors would dine, and he got to know them from eating there. They said this was a real wow moment for him. Because of his humble beginnings, he never thought he'd be at a restaurant eating where doctors would also be eating. I finally had to ask Brooke, after I realized that she was very open, about how perfectly in line all the watches and items in his house were. Every watch that was torn apart was neatly placed, the hands in a row, and everything was just perfect. Brooke laughed and said right away, he was definitely OCD. She said this was a Warble family trait where things must be just so and pretty much perfect. She explained that her dad was the definition of a perfectionist. She also quickly followed up with that being a perfectionist, he was also a procrastinator. He knew how much time a project should take to get it done correctly, but that didn't always mean he got to finishing the project. His good friend Harvey said that he would go to his house to visit and just move a watch or two while he was there. Harvey mentioned that he knew right away which one was out of place and had to move it back to where it was. Brooke said to me that she feels that he was always helping others because it was easier to finish other people's projects than his own. By helping others, he was able to calm his mind and focus on the project at hand, rather than worrying about his own issues. He loved to be around people too, so projects allowed him to bond with others. When I asked Jeff what some of the adjectives were that he would use to describe Walt, the first thing he said was that he had a mind like an iron trap. Jeff said he remembered absolutely everything. As they were organizing watches and he was having to help him pack up, he realized that an hour task would soon take days to weeks because he remembered every detail and felt the need to share it about every watch he owned, where he got it, and what it was. He also said that he was physically strong. I believe the exact phrase was, whenever he hugged me, it was like hugging a brick wall. Brooks said that if there was a tug-of-war game at a picnic or an event, you wanted Walt on your team. Another word that came up was stoic. Even when things got hard, Walt did not get upset. He remained calm and tackled the issues head on. Finally, they said he had a one-track mind, and that if he was working on a project, that was the only project you could talk to him about or that he would focus on at the time. Well, I could stand here all day talking about Walt and what he's done. Everyone in this room is here because Walt meant something to you. He formed genuine connections with friends, family, clients, suppliers, and just about everyone he met. Brooks' cat probably needed a little more time for him to warm up to him, but I think they were making headway. Like I said earlier, life is like the winding of a watch, and what really matters is the time between the initial winding and the last tick. I think what Walt did with the time he was given was pretty remarkable, and we should all strive to be remembered like Walt. Before we listen to a song that Brooke selected, I shared a poem with her written by Mercedes Graff, and she thought it was appropriate for today's service. As soon as I saw the pocket watch in the window, I knew I had to make it yours. I could imagine you holding it in your hand until the cool metal warmed to your touch. I could hear your chuckle when you heard it chime on the half hour, and I could guess your delight when you slipped it in your shirt pocket near your heart. For a moment, I envied something that could be carried with you wherever you went, and I felt sure that it would be yours to possess as long as you treasured it. Yet I smiled even as I counted out the money to buy it, because I knew deep inside myself that you would know how like that pocket watch I am. For I am with you wherever you are, and I belong to you as long as you hold me close to your heart. At this time, we're going to listen to the song, This Moment in Time. Maybe.
More than a ripple, less than a splash, the air, light of glory. Give me the morning, and I'll give you a song. It's so good being part of the story. This moment in time, this right time of day. Oh, I love being with you and watching my life at play. My love in your eyes is light in my dreams, and the feelings you choose have touches of blues and green. This trip into time, this timeless embrace, and like a kid in a storm, I'll always want more to taste. And no matter what comes, I know the sun is gonna shine because of you and me. There'll be this moment in time. this flesh, the air to belong out of glory. Give me the morning and I'll give you a song. It's so good being part of the story. This moment in time, this right time of day, oh, I'd love being with you and watching my life and play. And no matter what comes, I know the sun is gonna shine. Because of you and me, there'll be this moment in time. La 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 la.
So at this time, I was told there's some family members who would like to come up and share some memories, so whichever members of the family would like to go first. Did you go first? Okay.
Okay. They say if you drink water, you won't cry, so I hope we can get through this. I might drink a lot of water. Okay. First, I want to thank Brooke for coming home to help her dad until he passed. It means so much to your dad. And next, I want to thank Dr. Benjai, which is infectious disease doctor. He says she saved his life, and it meant so much to him that he had this sign to be there for Brooke. He loved his Dr. Benjai. They had a special relationship. When Butch was in the ER already, Dr. Benjai asked him, "How's your coffee?" And anybody that knows Butch, he drank coffee and he wanted his coffee. So he told Dr. Benjai it wasn't too good. It was cold. He said, "It's okay." Dr. Benjai said, "I'll go and get you some coffee." So she went over to the cafeteria and brought him a hot, fresh cup of coffee. That's probably the best medicine she could have given him. And also, the other doctor that he really loved at the Hershey Med Center was Christina Newport. She always told Butch straight up. And in January, she had to tell him how bad his lungs really were. And Christina Newport, when he got home, even stopped by his house in the 3 hours he was home before he passed away. So they had a really close patient-doctor relationship. She took care of him for 6 years under palliative care. They thought he'd pass away in June of 2020, but he didn't. Butch told him, he said, "I don't have cancer." He knew he didn't have cancer. He just had bad lungs. And the day he decided to quit smoking, he decided to breathe. So he made it. Both Butch and I, we began life at 6:30 in your lane in Chamber Hill. Like Alex said, we didn't have much. But if you knew us, you had to know where we came from. Because we were going into poverty. Our dad started to build a house, but he never finished it. So there were 10 people that lived in 2 rooms. There was electricity only if my dad paid the bill, which he didn't always do. A lot of times we grew up without the electricity. There was no running water. But Butch remembers when they drilled the well on our property. They didn't drill it until 1958, Butch was 7 years old. Him and brother Paul would walk down to the farm, spring, and carry water back to the house. One time Butch told me he slipped and he fell. He was only a kid, probably around 7 years old. Him and brother Paul would go for the water. And Butch slipped one time and he broke the jar. He cut his hand, but he still had to do it. That didn't get him out of it. Our dad still made him go get water. So, and the land that was given to my mom, it was given to her by her grandfather, David Daniel Daimler. And she got it for $1, the property. There was an inn, her house was torn down, and that material was supposed to build us a house. But only my dad burned some of the wood, and they only built the 2 rooms, and that's how it was for 17 years. It wasn't easy. So, like he said, there were wood stoves. For years, Paul and Butch, they would take care of getting the water and everything. So, but the farm was a great place to grow up. Even though our housing wasn't good, the rest of our life was fun. We had a great time on the farm. We'd go sledding, all kinds of stuff. So that's why Butch was the way he was, growing up like that. But we learned one thing. We learned to help each other, which we always did. And my oldest brother helped Butch. I had him go and live at his house to finish school once he was married and had a nice house. And we always helped each other. Butch was the 5th child, and him and Willie was the 6th child. They didn't always get along. I remember them fighting pretty often. But they didn't hold anything against each other. Once we'd fight with each other, we were good. We always treated each other kind and loving, and so they got along once they settled their differences and that. But I think one time I remember the story that Willie went to hit Butch and he moved and Willie's fist ended up hitting the car instead of Butch. So, I mean, that's just how it was. Butch's older sister Lillian couldn't be here today, but they were close. I remember Lillian telling me when she would take Butch on the bus to go shopping downtown Harrisburg. And then she was only probably a teen, maybe 12, 13 years old, somewhere in there, because after that she moved away from home to go to a boarding school. So they were pretty young to take the bus by themselves and go downtown Harrisburg shopping. And Lillian would get money by cleaning somebody's house. And there was this one time she couldn't take Butch with her, but she didn't want to tell him why. She was going to buy him a birthday present. And that was probably the only birthday present he was going to get. So Butch cried, but I guess when she came back and gave him the present, I guess he was okay then and happy. So the other thing too about Butch, like he said, he did well in school. He never wanted to flunk. He said he would do good enough to make sure he passed, so he got it into high school, and then when he did carpentry and all that, in high school he really excelled, and he made a wonderful living being a carpenter. And then also, like, for shopping and everything, I helped Butch buy groceries and stuff. He would always circle the sales on the paper, and he would always buy whatever was on sale and use coupons if he could and everything. And one of his best things that he loved doing was buying the candy at CVS with coupons he would get from all the medicine, and he would get these coupons from CVS, and he would wait till they were on sale. He would take his coupons in, and he could almost walk out with bags of candy for nothing or a couple bucks. And then he would take that candy, and he would take it to his doctor's appointments, and he'd give it to the staff. This made him happy. And it was his way of being cheerful with the medical staff. He didn't want any pity. He told me more than once. He knew it was his fault that he smoked, but he enjoyed smoking, so he didn't care. Until the day he decided that he had to breathe, and he was willing to give it up, and he never cheated. So he didn't want any pity, and he lived his life the way he wanted to live it. So I think that's pretty much I got through what I wanted, that I think he'd want me to tell you. I did tell him that I thought life on the other side would be beautiful. So I hope he's enjoying life on the other side. And I'm thankful for all my memories with him. I went to Rehoboth Beach and all the fun we had. And there's one other story about Rehoboth Beach I'll have to tell you, just in case I don't know if Pat Benson or not here tells you his story. But he would always go camping a lot with Butch, and even before I ever started going camping. But at the end, when Pat was getting out of the Army, he told him he had to retire from the Army because he was going camping with the boys at Rehoboth Beach. And he did show up, but he was camping with us. So I don't know what he did to get out of the Army to make sure he went camping with us, but he went. So him and Butch, they were good best buddies, and like a lot of other people in this room, Butch meant a lot to a lot of people.
Who wants to next? You want to go?
I guess.
I know you're not a talker, so.
I was prepared for this years ago.
Everybody get comfortable.
Hi, I'm Pat Benson. I have a few words I'd like to say.
That's a CBS receipt.
Oh, wait. Page 1. All right, we'll shorten it up a little bit, okay? You don't know me, you'll know me after this day. Everybody was right. Butch, I have Rod here, who was my best man at my wedding. I think I was his best man, because he was desperate. But, Butchie was in my life back then too, but because of my love for fast cars and, Chargers, that kind of thing, I was with Rod. But I just want to let you know, the first time I met Butch, my world changed. For the good, okay? So, Ed, what time is it?
And it is right now, 18 minutes to 3.
Spot on, Ed. Good job. I know not everybody can see this, but this was my very first pocket watch, given to me back in 1978. By Butch. I'm also known with different names too. I just want to know the family adopted me with a whole bunch of different names. I don't want to offend anybody, but I was known as Sucker Head, Sucker Bubblehead, Benson. I answered about anything, to be honest with you. But I want you to know this is a celebration of Butch's life, not his death. I know all the people in this room will remember him. If anybody knew Butch, I feel like I'm stealing some of your thunder, but I'm bringing the lightning on, okay? All right, so if anybody knew Butch, he always celebrated life to the fullest. One of his best traits was his laugh. Yeah, that's it. Shake them heads. When he laughed, you knew Butch was near. You didn't even have to see him, and you knew Butchie was in the area. Butch did everything correct. If you're not gonna do it right, don't do it at all. Because I don't want to have to come back through and do it right. So he always signed his work. So let's talk about back in 1977. That was BP. That's before Pat. I only met the family in 77. I was told how him and the family and friends did projects and was always working together and having a good family life. I was a city boy. Alright, so when I came to this side of the tracks, man, I'll tell you what, I met people I could connect with, and pretty easy with the Warbles, let me tell you. Butch always had the highest awards for carpentry. I mean, he was a golden hammer. His brother Bob was a gold mechanic or a wrench or whatever. It didn't matter. What it was is they both strived, everybody in the Warble family strived to do really good and get really good at whatever they do. I couldn't have, in that time of my life, ever not be thankful for that kind of guidance. I mean, and you're right, he was good at hunting. Let me tell you a story about that. If you snooze, you lose. Rabbits, birds, between Ed, Gary, Bob, even Willie back then, my wife, oh. I never got my game bag dirty because I couldn't even get a chance. So when it comes to birds and rabbits, it was just a dream for me. Let's see here. During the time I knew Butch and his family, they always had time to sit Benson down and the kid from the city and ride me. Of course, you know, that's thick-skinned me. But I only expected it because it was family can only do that. And they accepted me into the family. So let's go back to 78 now. When I was 18 years old, I knew him and his brother. They invited me into their lives. How my life did change. I didn't know then I was to learn about wood that would carry me through my whole life. Good work, good respect, good manners, and a godly respect for all. That's what I learned. He taught me only a fraction of what he knew, but it was more than most people knew in all their lives. He was incredibly intelligent. I worked with him for about 8 months. I just got back from just basic training and nobody wanted me. I was just a skinny little kid. Butch said, bring him over, I'll teach him some stuff. Well, for 8 months I worked with him, and in 8 months I learned so much about the wood trades and construction and stuff. I was offered a job through Moore's Lumber Company. Now that's a long time ago, that's 80s. But back then that was kind of, you know, if you wanted to go to work for a lumber yard, that was it. Until Lowe's came by and heck, but long story short, God was good. If I didn't learn anything from Butch, I would have never even been thought about the job. So from there, I stayed in the wood business for all my working career. What a start. Can everybody remember the person that gave you your first chance to work? I can. It was Butch Warble. Which I am so grateful, and words can't explain. I want to leave you with these thoughts of joy. Some highlights of skill for me too. Pocket watches. You haven't heard it enough. Every time I see this, Chevy trucks. Yeah, those Cheyenne Chevy trucks, he rebuilt beds. Most people would scrap them. No, Butch and his brothers would rebuild the wood, varnish it, and I wouldn't even want to put nothing in there. Didn't even throw his tools in there. When Butch ever entered the room, he lit it up with laughter. And I know everybody in this room knows that. So, Remember those things. We tried to solve the world's problems around the campfires. With a beer or two. Or 3. 4. 5, then Vincent got silly. And it didn't help, but boy, we had a great time. This is a verse that I heard a long time ago that I believe would fit Butch. Remember me with smiles and laughter, for that's the way I will remember you all. If you remember me with tears, then don't remember me at all. In closing, Psalm 121, 7 and 8. The Lord will preserve me from all evil. The Lord will preserve me from coming in and going out. The Lord will provide me, you, now and forever. So in Jesus' name, amen. Please rest in peace, Brother Butch.
At this time, anyone else would like to say anything? Yeah, please. Anybody's welcome.
Yeah, I've got something for PJ that Ryan's gonna help me. PJ sent a book. He said, we're gonna go to Florida, but I'm gonna send 17 pages. You're ready. Here it is. Today I want to share a few words about Uncle Butch. Seriously. A man who had a quiet strength, a generous heart, a laugh you could never forget. I think we'll all agree with most of this. PJ's not usually wrong about that stuff. When I think of Uncle Butch, I think of first, he was there for many of mine. He took them trout fishing, showed them the patience it takes to stand in cold water and wait. Taught him how to shoot a bow and arrow, how to split wood, how to safely and confidently use a chainsaw. They weren't just skills. There were lessons in responsibility, confidence, respect, and hard work. Go ahead.
Uncle Butch even bought me my first pair of work boots. Well, his first pair. At the time, they may have seemed like just boots. But looking back, there was so much more. They represented belief in hard working, standing on your own, and being ready to show up when something needs to be done. Values he lived for every single day. And Uncle Butch did show up. He was one of the hardest workers I've ever known. And he never hesitated to help others. A perfect example of that is when he helped his dad during his illness. Making sure his finances were in order, looking out for him, and ensuring he had what he needed. He did it without asking for recognition because that's just who he was. Uncle Butch didn't help people for thanks or praise. He helped people because he cared. He helped because he understood that life is lighter when we carry it together. What he'll miss the most, beyond the lessons and the memories, is his infectious laugh, the kind that could instantly change the mood in a room and make you smile, even on the hardest days. That laugh carried a spirit, genuine, warm, and full of life. Uncle Butch meant more to him, than he can fully put into words. He is grateful for the time we shared, things that he taught him, and the example he set. His influence is something he'll carry with him always. We will all miss him deeply. Uncle Butch, thank you for everything, Rusty.
Okay, now that I don't have to read something. One memory we have, Nancy and I share, Butch hired my wife to clean for Phyllis years ago. So she would show up when Ryan was really little. So he'd be downstairs while your mom was doing something, and Butch was downstairs with him, and he was cleaning. And he had that toddler babble that every mother knows that your toddler babbles, and you have no idea what the hell they're saying, right? So Uncle Butch would be downstairs, and he would have that laugh. You would hear him all the way through the house. Angie said she's upstairs. And Uncle Butch says, I don't know what the hell Ryan was saying, but his hands were going. He was super serious about it, and that's the laugh. You could hear it through the house. Thanks.
Anyone else? We sure? I was gonna say. Okay. So, before I turn it over to Brooke, I just wanna, as we end our time together today, I wanna leave everyone with a lesson that I feel like Walt lived by. And that would be the concepts of plumb, level, and square. These terms make, I have to give Brooke and Jeff credit because they kind of fueled the inspiration for this one. These terms make up the basis for any construction, but they can also be guiding principles to live your life by. Plumb refers to the straightness vertically. Walt lived a straightforward life and tried to do the best he could to follow the right path. Level refers to straightness from side to side. Brooke said that he was a level man in many ways, and the way he handled every situation. He had a quick fuse when he saw injustice, but overall he always kept a level head. Finally, a square refers to a perfect 90-degree angle. Walt did not take shortcuts, nor did he expect his family to. Much like his carpentry, he maintained square corners that did not operate on the principle of good enough. I encourage everyone to adopt these principles and use them to make decisions. Walt used them to live his life and to overcome obstacles that many people would have resigned themselves to. I hope today that it is obvious that we are here to celebrate a man who was a friend to many, a man who worked hard to build himself up, a man who always put others first and was the first person that would be there if you needed help, and most importantly, a man who knew how to live a life well lived. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Brooke.
Thank you all for coming today. As we listened to the song, when Patty asked me last week what was your dad's favorite music, sometimes I didn't see that side of my dad later in his years that I did in the earlier years. So a few family members instantly said, Engelbert Humperdinck, your dad taught me how to slow dance. Oh, your dad was so into music. And growing up, working on our house, that's the thing I can remember the most is my dad found words and emotions in a Hallmark card and in music. He was the reason Hallmark is in business. But in that song, A Moment in Time, a couple of Bible verses came to me recently. Ecclesiastes 3:1, there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven. And Isaiah 60:22 says, when the time is right, the Lord will make it happen. We don't always know when that is, but the Lord knows our days, and they're precious to us. You all are in this room today because you spent at least a moment in time with the man I called Dad. My dad, Walt, or Butch to the rest of you. My dad was generous with his time, you all have heard that. Anybody at any time that needed something, if you even heard wind that you might be building a kitchen, I'm sure my dad showed up to help, whether you wanted it or not. He might have even said, no, that's not how we do that. We might have to start over. We now have words like OCD and maybe some perfectionism, and back then it was just what we called the Warble way. So if you weren't familiar with the Warble way, I apologize when you got indoctrinated of that. There was a time in my life when I was building my former home with my husband at the time, and I knew things weren't quite right, but I didn't have the support the whole way in Georgia, and all it took was one phone call, and I said, Dad, can you? And he said, I'll be there right away. He stayed for a month. And the lessons that we built as adults were so different than what we built as kids when he was my dad growing up at that time, and to have that adult friendship really meant a lot to both of us. We all know that my dad loved a good story. His favorite movie was Secretariat, so if any of you ever watched that, you'll think of my dad. I think growing up, my dad knew that their family were the underdogs. They never thought they could make it. They didn't even know how it was possible. He would tell me, waking up in the morning, the water bucket was frozen. They had no electricity. It was that cold in the house. And who knew where the food was coming? So I don't know that my dad ever had enough about him to say we made it. Because there was always one more thing we could maybe have that would make us feel a little bit better. But the underdog was the story. He would cheer people on, knowing that we can all do better together. Colossians 3:23 says, "Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward." I'll tell you, my aunt mentioned Dr. Benjotti and Dr. Newport. And I know my dad is special. I worked in medicine after high school, and not all doctors take time to have a different bedside manner. But there was something special about my dad, and I appreciated those stories from doctors who went and got him a cup of coffee. And I said, Dad, I don't know if she likes candy or she wants cake or what she wants, but you make sure you take it next time because that's special. So I'll tell you, on Friday when I got my dad home and he was resting peacefully and everybody was there at the house, I turned around and there was his palliative doctor who knew him for 6 years. And I said, the angel has just arrived. She walked over to his bed and she said, well, now we've talked a little bit about what you like to do when you're not with me, but I had no idea pocket watches were really pocket watches. And I knew at that moment my dad felt the peace of home and heard the breath of heaven in that angel's voice. And he looked at her and he couldn't speak anymore, and I knew that that was all he needed to cross over, was that he was in the comfort of somebody who carried him for so long. My dad was good with his sayings. He taught me a few of them. So Bill Thomas called. He could not be here today. But Dad said, Brooke, you know what Bill tells you? Best time to shoot a turkey is when you see one. Keep that in mind, Pat. You might need that. Because I know after a few years you learned how to get the first shot, even if you didn't hit him.
I just stopped hunting with Warble.
That's right. That's right. He's not going to do it for you. My favorite saying from Dad the last 6 years is, once in a while a blind squirrel finds a nut. And that has been me the last few years. I would call him and I'd say, Dad, I found a nut. You're never going to believe what happened. So I have to tell you, today being the Kentucky Derby, in the last 6 years, for a man who said, I'll never text, I don't need that crap. He didn't understand how you can go from never having electricity to wanting to not talk to somebody but yet still send messages. I don't need that crap. Well, we would text him and he didn't really always know how to text back, and thankfully he had a grandson, Alex, who could teach him how to use a phone, a device. And he thought, well, one day he said, well, you figured out how to do it, I'm just going to push this button. Oh my gosh, I caught him. I said, Walter, are you okay? Once in a while I call him Walter. Yeah, I figured it out. Well, when 2020 happened and my life changed and COVID set in, Dad no longer could go out and do antiquing and collecting and pocket watch stuff. So I opened him up to the world of eBay. And I owe my brother a formal apology. He had almost cleaned out most of the collectibles, and I filled the house back up in the last 6 years with my dad. We made a good effort. So I would send him text messages of all the list of things for sale, and oh yeah, look at this, and look at this, and I'll tell you, once in a while, I had to tell my students, you're going to have to give me a minute. My dad's on the phone, and I got to hear this watch part story. But in all of that, my dad also had a good flavor for art. His late wife, Phyllis, was an artist, and he really appreciated fine art. Well, he said to me, do you think we can find this picture on eBay? I really found this calendar, and I really like this artist, and I really like this picture. And so I started looking around, and it was from an artist named Terry Redlin. And I said, oh, Dad, whoa, that's about as much, a couple of pocket watches. How much you want to spend? Well, I don't know. Keep looking, see what you find. We'd find one and message and not hear back. And so when I came back up, he asked me again, did you find one of those? Oh, let me go look, Dad. Let's go see what's out there. There, $1,500, something like that. He wasn't sure he was ready to do that yet. Well, after my dad passed away on Friday, I knew I had to have that piece of artwork he always wished he could have in the memory of my dad. So I looked on eBay, and there was one in Wisconsin and one in Illinois, and lo and behold, there was one in Pennsylvania. And I reached out to them and I said, do you think you could get it to me by Saturday? And if so, I want to buy this from you. And they said, we'd really like to make this happen for you. So here's what the fee is, and you'll be able to receive it Wednesday or Thursday, what day works better for you. And I said, either day is fine. So once in a while, the blind squirrel finds a nut. I happen to check my phone on Thursday as I'm cleaning and organizing and managing phone calls, and this eBay message says, we'll be at your house in 30 minutes. So the artwork that sits in the corner is in honor of my dad. It has a female and a male deer overlooking the creek where I spent most of my time with my dad as a kid, hunting and fishing for the food that we ate. And they felt so compelled that they drove from near Pittsburgh 3.5 hours one way to bring that poster so that painting so that my dad could have his piece of art. And I knew he would enjoy that story. Yesterday, a dear friend of my dad's called, and we had a good laugh remembering my dad. He knew my dad for many years, work and friendship. The man shared that he had recently experienced a life-ending medical emergency. And while he was in surgery, awake as was needed for this particular surgery, he said the room is always prepared very cold, and I had to communicate with the doctor team, and I could hear them talking to me and asking me, could I feel anything, and how was he feeling? He said, Brooke, all of a sudden I had this complete change. The room got quiet, and I couldn't hear anything. He said, and it got so warm, like I was being coddled like a baby. And he said, I knew that was the Lord. And he said, and all of a sudden, that peaceful feeling was so incredible. And yet, all of a sudden, it was assured to me it wasn't my time, and the room got cold again, and I could hear everybody talking. He said, I want you to know that what your dad is experiencing right now is the most peaceful place. We cannot even imagine. Since my mom passed away in 2004, Dad and I had had a lot of time together these last few years. And when my son passed away in 2020, I sent my dad a Father's Day letter that year that my brother and my sister delivered for me. My dad and I truly became best of friends. It started out innocent, that eBay stuff. Once in a while back then when I was visiting, I would print him out the ads before I taught him how to really text. And he would go through the book, and I would get out his price book just to get him. You didn't need to get my dad talking, but once in a while I'd get the book out, Dad, and I'd go through, oh, this got 3 stars. Oh, this watch has 4 stars. Oh, and he'd talk about this one, and he'd talk about that one. And all of a sudden I found some stuff. I said, let's go see if they're on eBay, Dad. Let's go see if they're on eBay. And so some of you guys may have heard stories. My dad was not a proud man, but for an underdog, he could never bring himself to understand why he could experience such good things. Why has he finally made it to have such nice things? Well, one of those very fine things is known as an Illinois Bun Special 163A. I will spare you the details. However, it is one of the cream of the crop high dollar watches. And what made my dad so proud about that story was that I brought the paper over and he looked through it and it wasn't running and it was a really expensive watch, and yeah, I'd really like to have that one. Well, we got lucky and we won that auction. And I'll tell you, the day my dad called me, he said, Brooke, you are not going to believe this. I'm sure you've all heard this. We bought that watch from the mafia! Signed by the Gambinos in New York City. The Gambinos! Brooke, we bought the watch from the Gambinos! I said, well, Dad, make sure it doesn't have anything illegal inside of it. Oh my gosh, he loved to tell that story. I still have the paper. It sat beside his bed these last 6 years. And if you have heard that story, you probably heard it better than I can retell it. But that was something that my dad could never understand. How could he have ever come in contact with a watch of such fine quality from the New York Mafia? Back in 2020, when I wrote my dad a letter, and I've now since found a few cards around the house, it seems that one thing was clear to me, and I'd like to read that to you from what I wrote my dad back then, and a story that I wrote my dad from when my son passed away. I said, Dad, happy Father's Day. It's been a minute since we spoke, but I know our connection is so strong we have lost no time. This year I pray you have a wonderful day for Father's Day. I wanted to remind you how I've had the best of my life. When anyone asks me my best memories growing up, they are always without a doubt. Fishing in the breathtaking streams nature created in Manatee Creek, being by your side and building our home. I always knew you and I shared a special bond. I hope you always know I have no regrets. You were a great dad. You will always be with me. I will always be so proud you were my dad. You were so very strong, so fun, so practical, so hardworking, and so full of amazing wisdom and strength. I know it's probably been hard for you since January. This was written 6 years ago. I wish I could heal the hurt inside of everyone. Nathan really enjoyed your yummy snacks. It warms my soul we will be reunited in heaven with Nathan and all of our loved ones. To see his face and to get the best hug, I know he'll be there when it's your time. Today, remember only the best memories. Laugh, love, and remember. You taught me how to really live. And I wrote him a little story from my son at the time, after he passed away, and it says, Pop, Pop, happy Father's Day. I watch over you, do you feel me? I wipe your tears. I can't wait to hug you and someday show you heaven. The water is so clear. I saw Jesus and he is beautiful. The best part, you can have all the pineapple preserves that you want. So if any of you knew, my dad was pretty particular about some of the foods that he would eat, but pineapple preserves was the one thing he shared in common with my son, and they enjoyed those together. You heard a lot of stuff about my dad. I'll tell you the one thing my dad was in a hurry. Growing up, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have video games. We had TV a little bit here and there, but my dad did life in his time. When we were fishing, we were fishing. There was no reason to hurry home and do something else. If we were working on the house, we were working on the house. We were out hunting, we were just out hunting. And just that reassurance that Dad was never somewhere else. He was with you when he was with you. He cared about that relationship so much that there was never another care in the world at that moment in time. My dad taught me how to be a steward of the earth, hunting and fishing for our food, reusing materials as much as possible. He believed in hard work. He was a true provider. He always said to my sisters and I, he might not always have been the most emotional, but he never wanted us to go hungry because he knew what hunger felt like. He never wanted us to not have a roof over our heads, to have electricity and heat, and he never wanted us to not know we were loved. And that was how my dad showed love. And I know he showed it to all of you the same way. Another story I can remember about my dad was that there was one Thanksgiving, we had a mouse in the house. And although my dad didn't always show his soft side, once in a while it quite surprised me. So that year we were sitting at the dining room table in our little tiny house, we should probably call it a kitchen table. And we're sitting there having Thanksgiving, and we had two beagles at the time. They were sitting at the edge of the kitchen. They were not allowed in. And all of a sudden, snap, there goes the mouse trap. And squeal like you've never heard. Oh my gosh. Everybody pushed their chairs back. I'm against the wall. I couldn't go anywhere, and I didn't know what to do. And I was, oh gosh, maybe 10 or 11. And he said, well, he walked around the corner, and wouldn't you know that little mouse got only his foot caught. And so he's squealing and turning that trap around, and we just had this story a few days ago, we were remembering. And all of a sudden, Dad, what are you going to do with it? He said, today's Thanksgiving, and his thanks is giving too. And he went outside, and he opened that trap. See you later, little mouse, have a good day. I don't know if it ever came back or not. So my dad and I had an unhealthy obsession with April Fools with each other. I hope none of you were at the end of any of that either. But once in a while we would play good tricks, and other times we would play not so fun tricks. But we really enjoyed April Fools. There was no discussion. You couldn't tell anybody about what you might do. You had to just really figure out, could I outsmart him? Well, this year for April Fools, I had a feeling it might be the last one. And it was really kind of emotional trying to figure out how I could play a trick on my dad while I was living with him. And I kept thinking, what am I going to do? gosh, I don't want to do something that I'm going to give the man a heart attack or make him choke. And so all day long it was supposed to rain, and I had to work that day. It was Wednesday, and the sun was out. So I kept texting him all day long. April Fool's, Dad. He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, they said it was supposed to rain. That's our joke. The sun's out all day long. And I could never kind of come up with something that felt authentic to our relationship. So I thought, maybe Dad's not going to do April Fool's this year. Maybe that's, you know, he was kind of resting a little bit. Maybe that's past our relationship. Well, for the first time in my life with Dad, he actually sat down and taught me how to work on watches that week. He said, here's your watch and here's my watch. Oh, wait, nope, you're going to do yours. I'm like, okay, we're going to do this. So he taught me how to take it apart, how to oil it, and put it back together. My dad had a good friend named Ken that we befriended years ago from eBay, and Ken and my dad had worked on a lot of stuff together. So I was working on Ken's watches. And he said, you know, if it got tricky, okay, give it to me. I'm like, okay, but let me, and I was recording some of it. So we worked on that watch, and we would check it, right? Okay, 6 positions, right? You don't move it around a little, is it still running? So the watch had been running for about 3 or 4 days. Hey, did you check your watch? He could remember a lot easier than I could. Did you check your watch? Well, Dad, no, I forgot to check it. I had my meeting. Okay, go check your watch. Is it running? So this went on back and forth for a few days. So it was doing good. My very first repair job, cleaning job. I was doing great. All of a sudden, I came down, and that day was an exhausting work day. It was probably 10:30 at night. And he sat up from his bed very late in the living room, and I come into the kitchen, and it's kind of dark. And I'm just thinking, what can I eat for dinner? It's 10:30 at night. And he looked up and he says, hey, bro. Yeah, Dad. He said, your watch stopped. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. It's been going for days. I go over and I sit down at that table. I said, what do you mean? April Fool's. I will tell you, I tried so hard not to cry. That was the best April Fool's I could have ever asked from my dad. That really meant a lot. I know Alex read a poem already, but I had one too that I was going to read about time. It says, time is endless, but goes too fast. You long for the future, then yearn for the past. Summer's heat quickly turns to frost. A child grows, their innocence lost. Time forever slips away when the setting sun in each dawn of the day. The blossoms give way to falling leaves. Another life taken, their family grieves. Time can pass quickly, there's never enough. You miss it when it was easy, now life is too tough. The long hot days yield to the winter chill. A new life begins while another stops still. Time is something you can never gain. It only passes and brings new pain. A warm spring shower turns to freezing snow. People enter your life only to leave you and go. Time reminds you of all that you've lost. You try to regain it, but there's always a cost. The warmth of the sun bows down to the cold. A person once young, now frail and old. Time is wasted every day, spent on moments that fade away. So think carefully, think wisely about what you will do with the limited time that is given to you. Ecclesiastes says, whatever your hands do, do it with your might. For there is no work or thought or knowledge or wisdom in the grave where a stuff goes. My dad did life with all of his might. A few of you were kind and said maybe my dad was calm. I don't know if that's always true. I don't always know that he didn't sometimes have a hard time with his emotions, and sometimes they would get the best of him. One of the stories I remember about you, Aunt Ruthie, that Dad always said was that when him and Willie were fighting, he went to throw a rock at Uncle Willie. Do you remember that one?
I remember that, yeah.
And Dad missed and knocked Aunt Ruthie out cold. I know that what Dad always said was no matter how hard life had gotten for them, they always knew the bond of helping each other and sticking together, and that's who my dad was. While my dad wasn't an outspoken theologian, I sometimes think that their abuse was so hard he didn't quite understand how there could be a beautiful heaven waiting for him. My dad still had a gentle spirit, and I know that he knew heaven was waiting for him. And as the end grew close, we had a few conversations a little bit about it. And the verse that came to me that really summed up who my dad was 1 Timothy 5:8. But if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for members of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. And knowing that you are all here because at some point you shared a moment in time, or many of them, with my dad, he cared so deeply about each of you, about your successes, and about making sure that no underdog was ever left behind. So I'll end with this, the doxology of Numbers. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance among you and give you peace. I am better because my dad was my dad. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Did you want to get up and give a lecture on that pocket watch now, or do you want to wait till lunch? Wait, okay. So before we go, Brooke would just like the song "Heaven Is Another Life" played, and then we'll go our way. Maybe.
Walk through summer fields, barefoot under skies, with laughter in my pockets, the sunrise in my eyes. I kiss the hands of people and turn my heart to gold. I loved with all my weakness, even when I lost control. I made mistakes, I broke my word, but grace was louder than my hurt. When God closed my eyes, I finally saw the light. All the days I lived became a single shining light. Don't cry for me now, love kept me alive. Heaven's not an ending, it's just another life. My breath is growing quiet, like snow upon the trees. Peace is running through me, like rivers on their knees. I'm holding all the laughter, the sorrow and the scars. God writes our story gently, like constellations on the stars. I leave behind the world I knew, but every prayer I ever said was true. God closed my eyes, I finally saw the light. Every broken chapter found a reason in His sight. Don't cry for me now, love kept me alive. Heaven's not an ending, it's just another life. Take my hand when your day comes, there is nothing here to fear. Life is just a borrowed song, and God will make it clear. Every laugh, every tear, I would live it all again. When God closed my eyes, I finally saw the light. Every breath was worth it, every wrong and every right. wonderland. Walk through summer fields, barefoot under skies, with laughter in my pockets, the sunrise in my eyes. I kiss the hands of people and turn my heart to gold. I love with all my wings, even when I lost control. I made mistakes.
Well, thank you everyone for coming today. And on behalf of Walt's family, I want to invite everyone to McCleary's Pub, which is at 130 West Front Street in Marietta. If you want to put that in your GPS. At 5 o'clock. So you have a little bit of time, so drive slow. But thank you all for coming, and we'll start dismissing in the back.